what is this? Why is there not a road? Why are there no cars zooming around? Why can we not see a steering wheel? I'm sorry everyone, but I could not find my camcorder in time to make a states video as we have done in the past. So unfortunately, no camcorder means we're just going to have to use TCGO as a cruddy recap tool. Using TCGO because it's going to be easier for me to type in card names and show what I'm talking about at the time, rather than doing it with, you know, the callouts and stuff that just pop up on the screen. That takes a little bit more work, and I'm feeling pretty lazy today, so that's what we get instead. So sorry. Anyway, what we're going to do in this video, if you care to continue watching, is I'm going to talk about the deck I chose to play, so some of the cards I'm glad I put in it, and then we're going to talk about how the states tournament went, and maybe a couple of things I would have changed in the deck in retrospect. So let's go ahead and get started. And this deck that I chose to play is Party Time. It is very simple for the Pokemon line. It's just Sableye and Garbodor. Now, how in the world did you ever get the idea to play something stupid like this, Kooper? Well, so I hear all this talk about Darkrai and lasers, and that's nice. Now, I've always been a big fan of the hammer strategy, you know, junk hunting hammers. I've always kind of liked that. You know, we've had Boss God hammers, Fan hammers, two of the featured decks that we like to play on this channel. So when I hear this sentiment that you can't play hammers and lasers because that's not streamlined enough, I think, well, I think you can, but I don't know if you can fit it in 60 cards. So what can we cut out here? Well, how about that chump Darkrai? He seems like dead weight. So if I kick him to the curb, suddenly I don't really need to use cards like Dark Patch because my attacker is just one energy card. I don't need to use Energy Switch. You know, I can actually ditch a lot of these cards along with Darkrai. So I take out this one basic Pokemon and actually I get a lot of space freed up. So that lets me put in, you know, my hammers and lasers. But the hammer spam is pretty nice, but it does not do very well when you're going up against things like Blastoise and Electric, which can mass put energy on the field. So we need some way to block that, and how else would we do that but with Garbodor to lock out Deluge and Dynamotor. So again, that's pretty much the strategy of the deck. You just use hammers to deny energy, and you know, these Boss God hammers, Fan hammers, they all have something in addition to the hammers. With Boss God, it was milling with Aggron. With Fan, it's just blowing all their Pokemon out of play with Shiftry. But believe it or not, this one actually tries to take prizes by racking up damage with Hypnotoxic Laser and Burbank City Gym. So, a little bit on how this deck got named. Those of you who follow Digimon will probably remember that this thing is called a Numamon. So, how do we... the way we got the Party Time name originally was, well, we have Hammer Time, we have Laser Time. So you put them together, what do you get? You know, it's just the party. It's Party Time. So Numamon's attack, wherein he flings his own poop, and by poop I mean these stinky things right here, is called Party Time. So it became the perfect name for this deck for me, and this is it. This is Party Time. So let's talk about how the deck actually looks like. I've shown you the Pokemon and you can see the energy. So what about these trainers? Why did I pick these? Alright, so here we go. We got the deck loaded up on TCGO. And as we saw before, we got a very simple Pokemon line here. Only 4 Sableye and a 3-3 Garbodor line. And only 7 Dark Energies since our only attacker is going to be needing just 1. So let's jump into the meat of the deck, which is the trainers. And we're going to start with the supporters because that's what I usually lead off my list with. And let's see, we got 4 Shirin. I would definitely never run Bianca in this because whenever I do one of these Sableye shenanigan decks, I always end up having like 10 card hands fairly often, and that's definitely not the case where you want Bianca to be your friend. We also are not really worried about into ones too much because, of course, we have Sableye active all the time. He's going to be able to junk hunt something and bail us out of that. So, and you know, we're probably going to get end a lot in early game anyway for people trying to flush out the junk hunts, things like that. So for that reason, you know, I'm not really worried about being able to recover from in, so we don't need to worry about Bianca, and Shirin can probably do about as good a job anyway. So for Shirin, I guess the big question here that I posed to myself was, do I want 4 Shirin or 4 in? For whatever reason, I did not want 4 of both. And, you know, usually with these boss god hammers, fan hammers type things, we're not actually trying to take prizes. We're either trying to mill them out or bench them with giant hammer. Yeah, that would be a great way to combine them. Giant fan from Shiftry. And since those decks don't really focus on taking prizes, then that makes N always going to be a shuffle draw 6. This deck does try to take prizes, so I didn't automatically include 4N, and ultimately I just went down to 3, but I kept it with 4 Shirin. So, and then we have Juniper. Juniper and I have kind of a love-hate relationship. I recognize that she's the best supporter in the format overall, but at the same time, I despise when I get triple Juniper hands, or okay, here's my Junipers and multiple rare candies, and yeah, it's just all sorts of yucky. So I heavily dislike, me personally, running really more than 2. Very rarely will I ever make a deck that's got more than 2 Juniper. Of course, it's always nice to be able to computer search or something for it when you need it, or in this case, dowsing machine for it. Which is another reason to run a lower count, I guess. This deck, however, I think I would have been perfectly fine running 4 Juniper, and that's because this deck does not care what it discards. It can get back any card in the deck from the discard pile by hook or by crook. And really can get it back as many times as it wants, too. So, Juniper was probably would have been fine going to 4, but I kept it in at 3, just because I don't want to go absolutely too discard crazy, I guess. So we have 2 Skylas. Originally I just had 1 and I had 3 Verbank City Gems, but I decided, you know, people are quite possibly going to put out Verbank for me, and if that's the case, or if they just don't try to fight the Stadium War much at all, I don't want these 2 dead cards in my deck. I would never want to go down to 1 just because what if it got prized, you know, then I'm going to have a difficult time taking prizes because Laser's not going to do enough. But I think 2 wound up being just fine. Skyla is still an out to a Verbank City Gym, so you know, if I draw into the Skyla, well, I can cash that in for a Verbank if I need that. Or if I've already got Verbank in play, or they do, I can get something else that's useful. So it just proved to be better, and running 2 is not going to be a problem at all. If I do get counter gemmed, well, that's what this card's for. I am going to win the Stadium War every time, unless they are for some reason a Sableye dowsing machine using deck that is trying to get some other stadium in play. But anyway, so that's the supporters in Stadium, which of course you can probably tell the point of the deck is to take out Pokemon with laser damage exclusively, sometimes Confused Ray, but that's very rare. So obviously we have Garbodor, so we gotta have some tools. I'll start with the biggest quantity one. That's the one I usually start with, because usually your bigger quantity cards are your cards that are more central to your strategy. And pretty much everyone agrees that Rescue Scarf is the best card to put on your Garbodor. When it gets knocked out, it comes back to your hand. It makes it easier to chain them if they try to knock out Garbodor. Obviously, if they can run Tool Scrapper, then this is not the case. Or if they can knock you out via poison damage somehow, like Darkrai, and then just laser damage is actually the finishing blow if they don't have Dark Claw. So, things like that. But overall, Rescue Scarf is the best tool for Garbodor. And just with running so few Pokemon, it's nice to be able to bring them back to the hand, rather than have to waste time super rotting them back in and then trying to draw them back out. I put in Eviolites, and this is mainly for Landorus. Landorus can go to town on this deck. Big Basics is a pretty horrible matchup. It's nice that I can hammer away their limited energy attachments, but they can swing in for big damage for just 1 energy card. And if I have Eviolites on Sableyes, you know, in that matchup I don't need to put down Garbodor at all, so I can just go with just Sableye. If I can get, you know, 2 Sableyes with Eviolites, then Landorus is suddenly not quite as effective, since it's only going to be able to deal 10 with Hammerhead, plus whatever it wants to be able to do with Laser. But Eviolite must-have card to even make Landorus a remotely winnable matchup. And even then, it's still not very favorable whatsoever. And then for the 6th tool, remember we can, of course, junk hunt these back, so I'm not going to be really worried about running out. It's just nice to have a decent enough quantity that I can draw into them. So Dark Claw is just there to allow Sableye to deal that 30 damage with Confuse Ray, which, you know, Laser operates in increments of 30. and it's what, multiples of 90? No, it's multiples of 60 HP. That if they're fresh, they will get knocked out going back into your turn. So 60 HP poke takes 30, and then 30 coming back into your turn. And of course, anytime you can get a knockout with poison coming back into your turn and they have to promote someone else, that's extremely helpful. So Pokemon that have like 60 HP, 120 HP, it's actually a range, so like 100 to 120, for example. But anyway, a Dark Claw Confuse Ray can kind of screw that up a little bit. So now this 90 HP Pokemon takes 30 from poison, and then 30 at the end of your turn, and now it's going to get knocked out coming into my turn. So it permits you to do that a little bit, and just sometimes you need that extra 30, that extra round of laser, as it were, before something can happen. And sometimes that's worth giving up your junk hunt for. So that is what Dark Claw provides. It's not overly useful, but it's helpful enough that it definitely warranted the spot. So that's the supporter stadiums and tool cards. And now we get into the beef of everything, which is the item cards. So we've got 3 items that we have 4 copies of. They are, of course, Crushing Hammers. It wouldn't very well be Hammer Time without these. And Hypnotoxic Lasers. It wouldn't very well be Laser Time without these. And then the other one, which is, pretty much every deck has 4 of these, of course, Pokemon Catcher. I could actually see this deck running with just 3 Catcher by virtue of Sableye. So if you wanted to cut back on the catchers, if you were on a budget, you could certainly do that. But I still decided to run 4 just because there's sometimes, we're going to be wanting to catcher this and that. Catcher up Blastoise when they can't rush in. Things like that. So I think 4 is certainly fine play. The only thing I was debating was, do I want to have 4 catcher or do I want to have 4 switch? Because Garbodor getting catchered is a big pain. And you need to be able to switch him out as much as immediately. You can of course junk hunt for switch, but then if it gets back into the deck, you need to be able to draw it out, and an extra copy of switch instead of an extra copy of catcher might be what you need to have situations like that. So that was kind of the only reason for me maybe not playing 4 catcher, but in the end I decided to go with 4 catcher nonetheless. So those are the only cards that have at least 3 of them in here, and we have a couple of 1-ofs. I believe the only 2 of is Super Rod, and this just is kind of going with, as I mentioned earlier, this deck can reclaim anything from the discard pile. And Pokemon and Energy, you're able to get back with this, and if it's not a Pokemon or an Energy card, we don't have special energies obviously, then it can be gotten back with our Ace Spec of choice, which is Dowsing Machine. Hold on, I'm going to save that for last. But anyway, Super Rod. Also, this deck burns through resources a little bit too quickly, and deck is running kind of low. We're gonna deck out. Oh wait, I have Super Rod and can junk hunt for it, so that typically will allow me to extend the lifespan of the deck with just throwing some more cards back in there. Usually that's enough. If you really had to, you could do some shenanigans where you retreat between 2 Sableyes and keep junk hunting Super Rod. You draw your Dark Energy, you attach it. Retreat, all this stuff. So you keep putting the Dark Energy in the discard pile by retreating, and then you get to shuffle it in with Super Rod. Possibly completely foiled if they end you and you have to draw multiple cards off that end, but in theory, you can stay alive forever by Super Rodding in Dark Energies. So anyway, so there's that. We do have 1 random receiver. The one I have in real life is not gold, and I must say that Pokeball print on the gold looks really cool. I love these random foil patterns. But yeah, 1 random receiver. Pretty much only used in Sableye decks, and well, I don't know, maybe some other decks too. But it's certainly worth its weight in gold when I don't have a supporter. Junk hunt for random receiver, and then you're pretty fine to go as long as you get supporters left in the deck. Which, if you don't, again, that's what that's for. I decided to go down to 1 enhanced hammer because I figured, the only deck that's really going to be playing heavy amounts of special energy cards, even Kling Klang doesn't really play it too much since it's mostly shifted to the full metal Plasma Clang versions, so even enhanced hammer is not going to be that good against that. Main thing it's going to be useful for is double colorless energies, but the main deck that runs DCEs is going to be big basics, and that's just such a bad matchup anyway. I think I'd rather have another card for a matchup that's a little bit more winnable, and I actually ended up replacing this the night before states with energy retrieval. So this deck does not have Dark Patch, and we can get energies out of the discard pile with Super Rod, but sometimes it's pretty nice to have energy retrieval. In theory, you can stand up there and junk hunt for energy retrieval as well as max potion, and just, you know, max potion, discard my dark energy retrieval it back, attach, and, you know, if they can't do more than 60 damage, then I can just heal all of that off with that little nifty combo. Unfortunately, of course, Sableye is not that hard to knock out when I'm not able to keep spamming away your energy and whatnot. But, you know, it was just the concept I thought was good, and proved to be pretty useful several times throughout the tournament. So I was very glad I made that decision to drop the enhanced. I think there was actually only one matchup where I played a deck that even had any decent amount of special energy cards in it, or where it became useful. So energy retrieval, I think, was definitely the right pick over an enhanced hammer for that. Now this is sort of surprising, and this is probably something I would change, but I'll get into that later. I only have one Pokemon search card in the whole deck, and that's Level Ball. So Level Ball is, of course, good for a Sableye. It's good for a Trubbish. I guess this is actually one of the couple things I would change. I think as early as the first game, I regretted this being a Level Ball instead of an Ultra Ball, because if it was an Ultra Ball, of course, it could get anything, and as I mentioned before, we don't mind discarding stuff with this deck at all. So just being able to add Garbodor to that list of targets that we can get with the ball, I think would have been a good idea. There weren't actually that many games, I think, where I had trouble getting Garbodor out. It was just getting everything else out. So maybe instead of just changing this to an Ultra Ball, I would have liked to have a couple more Pokemon Search cards. So let's see, I think that's pretty much everything except our Ace Spec, Dowsing Machine. As far as I'm concerned, this is the Ace Spec if you're using Sableye. It is just too good to be able to junk hunt for any trainer card, not just any item card. You know, if you say you have no cards in your hand, you junk hunt for this and any other item card, you draw something, you Dowsing Machine, discard what you drew and what else you junk hunted for, you get a Juniper, and bam. It's just being able to have infinite supporters. So, you know, you draw that opening hand of a Juniper and two Sharins, an N, and something else. Well, maybe not N. In that case, you'd probably just play the N. But, you know, you just don't have to worry about wasting supporters, because you're going to be able to get them back with this card. And just instead of, whereas Computer Search, you know, you peel one out of your deck, and then that's, you know, now gone forever. This, you don't waste one out of your deck. You get to reuse one, and you can reuse those supporters as much as you want with Dowsing Machine. And of course, it also allows you to win the Stadium War if they choose to fight that. You're going to be able to put Verbank into play as many times as you want. And also just sort of like last year's format, where we had, you know, sometimes even in Hammer Time, you would want to junk hunt for Junk Arm, which seems a little bit weird. But just being able to disguise what you're gonna want to get, or if you don't, maybe you don't actually even already know what you want to get, you can just junk hunt for Dowsing Machine and defer your decision until next turn, when, you know, they make a play or don't make a play, and then you can make a better choice at that point. So at the expense of course, discarding two cards. But certainly a very powerful effect, and when you can use it infinite times by virtue of junk hunt and get infinite supporters, that concept is pretty appealing, I must say. So I kind of glossed over, of course, the whole laser Verbank stuff, but hopefully if you've played in this format much at all, you know that that is the way to rack up some additional damage. And yeah, this deck that's kind of the only damage it does. So it's kind of a slow, painful death, or this deck just kind of gets swept onto the rug by a Landorus or something really quick. So I think that pretty much does it. We're going to go and jump into the round by round recap with help from our friends in the collection tab right here. Alright, and coming back to making this video a couple of weeks later, it is now after regionals. So a lot of my games did go to time, so unfortunately the notes are pretty subpar for the games, actually. whatever notes I did have I can't find right now, so I don't even have any names down. But we're going to be using TCGO's collection tab here to speed up the showing of any scans I'm going to talk about, I guess. So let's just jump right into it. This is kind of going to be a little bit of a choppy report, but you know, this deck did not exactly want to try to take prizes quickly, I guess. So that's the price we pay. We don't have much time to jot down notes between rounds. So round 1, we play Rayquaza Electric, and I guess everyone knows how this deck works now. It's been around for quite a while. You know, you Dynamotor stuff, Dragon Burst, all that good stuff. But this person actually had a nice addition to the deck that came from Plasma Storm, which is Victini EX with Turbo Energize. Provides an alternate way of energy acceleration, and I kind of like the concept from the start, although I haven't actually played, I don't know if I've ever actually played Rayquaza Electric since it first came out in Japan. But anyway, I had a Trubbish lead, and I think I had to play an immediate in. I got to go first. I did get a Sableye down, but I don't think he started with Victini. He had, I believe, Rayquaza active, but he's able to get down Sky Arrow, attach a fire, and just start turbo energizing. I guess as soon as he saw Trubbish, he realized that, yeah, he's probably going to have to be relying on Victini for most of this fight. And I chose to go after the Rayquazas for whatever reason. I mean, I guess there was not really much of a reason to go after the Electrics, but you wanted to go after the attacker, I guess, first and foremost. Arguably, I probably should have went after Victini, since that was his primary source of acceleration when Eel gets locked down. I believe he did knock out Garbodors a few times, but I was able to get him set back up again. So Dynamotor wasn't a big factor. Overall, I'd say Rayquaza is, or Electric in general, is not a great matchup versus this deck, because, you know, Rayquaza is nice when you can Dragon Burst for 180 and take 2 prizes. But when he has the Dragon Burst for 120 and only take 1 prize, yeah, he's not quite as good, especially when I can hammer away those fire energies. You know, of course they do play Super Rod and stuff, but makes it a little bit more difficult, you know, especially when you gotta manually attach or use a attack to attach. But I think one of my big problems was that I did not have Verbank in play for most of the game. Of course, Rayquaza Electric is one of those decks that runs a stadium that is not Verbank City Gym. Sky Arrow Bridge is usually the one of choice, of course. So there was a stadium war being fought, and eventually I did come out on top, but, you know, just the fact that it was fought at all means that I didn't have a lot of damage. And, you know, it was the first round of the day, so, you know, neither of us were really playing too hardcore. You know, it's kind of a casual pace. And I know he had at least, I think he had 2 pretty big Colruses. He had a full bench, I had almost a full bench, including at least one for like 9 or 10, maybe another one for 8 or 7. And he wound up with about 4 cards in his deck when time was called. And at this point, I think he had knocked out maybe a Garbodor and a Sableye. I had knocked out absolutely nothing. I had a lot of damage on his board, but it was kind of all spread around because he kept retreating between things. You know, obviously with Sky Arrow Bridge, you can kind of do that. And just take little damage from the poison. I think that was one of the reasons I was thinking about maybe going after Eels, because Eels might actually get stuck up there by not having a free retreat cost off Sky Arrow. But, or at least at 1 retreat cost that would be payable even if Verbank's in play. But I checked his discard pile, all his ends were gone, but unfortunately time was called. He had enough cards in his deck left, and I did not have enough damage spread around to get any EX knockout. A single EX knockout probably would have won me the game. Well, unless, you know, I don't... More than likely, I think. If we had been able to play it out and time had not been a factor, then certainly I would have won, because I don't think he could have taken 4 prizes in 4 turns with me having Garbodor out. But anyway, so we lost that one, and then the next matchup is... I don't know if it's my least favorite deck in the format or not, but big basics. Landorus is just kind of crazy, especially with lasers. But anyway, he got to go first, and I think I had a Lone Sableye and Hammerhead 430, and I don't think I have draw anything, so I just get turn 2 by Hammerhead, so boo-hoo. Not quite a donk, but, you know, turn 2 still kind of felt like a donk, I guess. Technically just being benched. But anyway, if you're going to get donked in a tournament, typically round 2 is the best round to get donked, because that's traditionally when the lunch break is. So we got to have a little bit longer lunch break, I guess. And I just went to the usual location. There's a Target near next level games, personal pizzas, whatever. Don't even have to drive. Just a quick walk up there, so that's always nice and convenient. One of my favorite things about that venue for sure. Anyway, so we come back from lunch, and can we say Pokedad? Is that a offensive term? I hope not. Anyway, since I don't have names, I guess we'll just refer to him as a Pokedad. But a junior worlds competitor Pokedad. So because I believe he had a tropical beach in here. But he had Eradicate Electric, which of course you need to accelerate energy onto Eradicate, of course, because it keeps getting knocked out, unless you're playing against the deck that only knocks stuff out with lasers. But Super Fang needs 3 energies, so one of the philosophies is use Electric because they keep getting knocked out to accelerate energies in Super Fang, and then of course use Hypnotoxic Laser to get that last 10 damage that you need with Eradicate. Now Eradicate is actually not that great whatsoever with against this deck, especially since I don't have any EXs. Super Fang is great. It's a great attack when you can knock out an EX for 3 energy of any color. It is not so much a great attack when you have to do, Super Fang and an item card to get 1 prize off a Sableye. You start wishing, why can't this just be like 3 colors for 70 or something like that, or at least like 40 to do a KO, and I don't need that laser every time. Especially when you only have 4 copies that you can play of Hypnotoxic Laser, and you don't have Sableye to bring them back into your hand. So, however, we had a Trubbish that got stuck active for a while. Of course, we play the 1 retreat Trubbish, so it's not, terrible to try to get it back. But, I believe I had an N, or I think it was a Shirin. A Shirin first turn, was able to get down a Sableye. I could have either attached an energy to the Trubbish or attached an energy to Sableye. I forget exactly what he had, but I felt reasonably... I wanted to go and put the energy on Sableye rather than attach to Trubbish and then have it get knocked out, things like that. I think I had another Shirin in my hand, so I didn't feel the need to garbage collection for that one. But unfortunately, I just kind of drew dead after that. I couldn't draw a switch or even another energy card to retreat Trubbish. And when I can't junk hunt, for a couple turns, that obviously provides them turns to set up. And kind of one of the glaring flaws with this list that I later found out was, yeah, I had 1 Pokemon search card, and that was 1 level ball. Anyway, humorously, I threw down Rescue Scarf on Trubbish, and humorously, he actually got to make use of Eradicate's first attack, Gnaw Through, and, discard a tool off of a Trubbish, which is not a terrible way to attack if you got nothing else to do. But like I said, he did have Tropical Beach, so that helped him set up a little bit. Eradicate does, of course, need 3 energy cards, so sometimes you can't pull off an attack that turn, so Beach can come in handy. At some point, I do get to Random Receiver, and I get into an N, and I'm like, okay, surely I can get an energy off this N and retreat Trubbish, and we can start going to town. But no. I draw a completely dead hand off the N. I think I actually do have a Garbodor, but if I go ahead and throw down the Garbodor, yeah, I can probably shut off the Dynamotors, but at the same time, I make it to where I need to pull one of 3 cards in my still huge deck in order to get Garbodor out of the active spot, or just hope that he manages, actually KOs it for me, and just gets Garbodor out of there. But nope, he's a little bit too smart for that, I guess. He actually catcher KOs the Sableye, and I don't think I get out anything else. I believe he actually did play Recycle, by the way, to get Hypnotoxic back, which is probably a pretty good idea. Because sometimes, you need to take more than 4 knockouts to win the game. And I don't think there's much of anything else in that deck. I mean, I'd probably still throw a Mewtwo or something in it just so that, I can at least take out a deck like mine, with some actual attacks not named Super Fang. Sometimes I really wish that Nothru just did 10 damage, I think Eradicate would be so much better. But, yeah, I think at some point I keep him asleep on a Hypnotoxic at some point, which buys me an extra turn. He bounces between Beach and Aspertia City Gym for more HP on Eradicate. But, yeah, I think I Beach for 4. I still have absolutely nothing, and wind up only getting 2 Pokemon out the whole game and lose to a Pokedad. So good job. We're down. We are down to 0-3. So the day is not going as planned. All right. So we are here in the lowly ranks of 0-3. But I guess the upside to being 0-3 is for this event they decided to put the low tables I guess in kind of the main area of the venue, and it was much cooler over there than it was over on the side where most of the people were. So we got to be a little bit cooler this round, which is good because it was getting a little bit hot. But anyway, so round 4 we play against Gallade Gardevoir. Of course, you know we have the new Gallade. I guess it's not really new anymore. Gallade from Plasma Storm for DCE does 20 times the amount of energy on your side of the board. Kind of reminiscent of Gardevoir EX from Sandstorm, although not quite. It does twice the base damage that's multiplied, but it only counts your side. But that's perfectly fine because you've got Gardevoir to double all the energies attached and just stack up the damage really quick. So anyway, as for how the game went, you know, this isn't going to be the only ability that he's got, is Psychic Mirage. So I kind of have to make a decision. Do I want to go with Garbodor or not? Ultimately, I decided to do so. You know, he is, of course, a Psychic weak Pokemon. So that's going to be a little bit more of a liability than maybe... I just noticed there's bubbles around this Gardevoir. That's amazing. Anyway, I decided, yeah, I do want to shut off Psychic Mirage. You know, just allowing him to play with more than four energy cards in his deck that can provide 2 energy cards. And especially when, you know, Gallade requires a DCE. And this deck also, of course, is going to run Mewtwo EX, which attacks for double colorless energy. You know, I want those attacks that can come in for 1 energy to be as limited as possible. If you have to attach 2 energy cards to attack this deck, I definitely have an advantage. So I believe he also had some Hypnotoxic Lasers in there, which I don't think I saw a Verbank or anything. But you know, it's a I guess he figured, you know, you got to knock out opposing Mewtwo's some way. You know, you guys are probably well familiar with this by now. You know, both Mewtwo's have 2 energy on them. It does 160. You know, you want a plus power or a laser instead of having to attach that 3rd energy card, you know, things like that. So maybe he just threw that in there and said, hey, everyone's playing Verbank, get some extra damage for me. You know, why not? Anyway, as for my side, though, I'm kind of lacking on lasers, but I do have hammers, so, you know, we're not able to really get much of an offensive presence established, but we do get a defensive presence established. I actually go on quite a roll with hammers. I got like 6 or 7 heads in a row at some point in the game, and I guess this is also a good time to mention another reason I decided to play this deck was because, you know, I got I think it was the Giratina Plasma theme deck, mainly for the Hypnotoxic, I guess, and Plasma Coin inside is bloody awesome. It's got a navy, cobalt, whatever blue back, instead of just the plain black like most of them have, and then the Plasma logo with the foil effect on there. It's one of my favorite foil effects they do on coins. It just looked amazing, and I decided, you know what, this is going to be the event that I flip coins, and I'm going to be doing hammer flips, laser flips, going to be flipping my Team Plasma coin. So that's what I decided to do all day, and that is in fact what I did. But anyway, as for how the rest of the game actually went, after I decided to throw down Garbodor, at some point, let's see, this is a little bit sporadic here and there. In other words, at one point he was able to catch up an X-Ball Garbodor for 80, but since, you know, I'm never going to attach energy to Garbodor, didn't knock him out, of course. And I believe I was just able to switch, maybe even get Max Potion off on that. And I believe he might have knocked out one Garbodor. No, I think he knocked out a Trubbish at some point. I think the only things he was able to knock out was a Trubbish and maybe a Sableye at some point. His time is starting to get close to call to knock out a Gallade, knock out a Mewtwo, so I'm down to 3 prizes. And at this point I can either kind of go for some quick prizes to solidify myself for when time does in fact get called. But I decided to go for Gardevoir instead, just to, you know, go ahead and, as much as I hate to injure Gardevoirs, because I love Gardevoirs, I decided to go ahead and go for that. I guess partly because it's got the nice 110. I don't want to make a difference either way. But anyway, so yeah, I decided to go for that. I actually missed some hammers, and so he's actually able to get 2 energy on Gardevoir, and I've got an injured Sableye. I think it's got maybe like 40 damage and an Eviolite on it or something like that. And so he attaches the second Psychic into Claire's Mind Shock, and I just kind of tap Garbodor, and it says Mind Shock, and I say Garbodor, and then he realizes he only has 2 energy attached, and Psychic Mirage is not in effect. So I don't think he had anything else he was going to do that turn anyway, although technically I guess he would have entered the attack step and his turn would have ended. But you know, we're at the 0-3 table, so who's really gonna bother to call a judge, I guess. Anyway, didn't really matter too much. I proceed to knock that out with lasers and knock out the 2 Ralts with lasers as well. I forget if this actually goes to time or not, but it definitely took a long time. But wind up to pull out the first victory of the day, and now I have to leave the cool side of the room. So next round, I'm up against the guy who I think was diagonal from me in round 4, and this is one of the most unique decks I think I've ever encountered at a tournament. At least, you know, besides something that was hastily cobbled together out of pieces of a theme deck. This actually seemed to be intelligently assembled and was pretty awesome. So he's got Excelgar, and you know, deck and cover, good stuff. But you know, normally you see Excelgar paired with stuff like maybe Empoleon, maybe Dusk Noir, you know, some stage 2 to sort of help him out in some way. There's no more Vileplume, of course. Maybe even Gothitelle, I guess, to substitute for Vileplume. But no, so he's got Excelgar. And, you know, since Keldeo's out there, he's also got Garbodor to prevent Rushin from taking away the poison. But probably the most interesting part of the deck that he had, and I'm definitely going to have to bring these up and show you guys, Combee, you know, Sting Missile, Donk Squirtles all day. Although, unfortunately for him, I don't think he got to play enough Blastoises all day. But his deck definitely seemed to be pretty anti-Blastoise with Garbodor and all the grass pokes. And there's Combee. And then, of course, Combee evolves into Vespiquen, which is very bad if it's the only attacker in your deck. But, you know, Gather Order gets out some more Combees, and then Damage Beat can definitely rack up the damage. And, yeah, if you deck and cover in this, I'm actually surprised this thing only has a 1 retreat cost. But, and furthermore, there's the train. You guys are going to have to deal with the train, sorry. Anyway. We made a point of it that Combee actually has a 1 retreat cost. Like, why does that not have a free retreat cost? Because otherwise it would actually be pretty decent with Excelgar. But anyway, as for how this matchup was as a whole, you know, the reason I mentioned he was a diagonal for me is I kind of got to see, okay, so that's what he's playing. That's interesting. And I come to the immediate conclusion, wow, this is actually one of the worst possible matchups I could face. Why? Well, 2 reasons. Number 1... well, actually the main reason is his attackers shuffle themselves into the deck. Now, why is this a problem? Because I do not take one-hit KOs by any stretch of the imagination. So if he's able to shuffle himself and all that damage back into the deck, I'm not going to be able to take knockouts. Not only that, he attacks for, you know, either a Grass with Combee or a DCE, and that gets the energy back in the deck. So I can't even discard his energy resources with my hammers. So I can't really kill him with lasers. I can't really hammer away his energy. How in the world am I going to win this? So this is probably one of the most crazy intense games. Maybe not intense, but crazy. I really wish this could have been recorded because it was amazing. So I'm going to try to hit at least all the high points here. One of the things I've got to consider is, am I going to throw down Verbank or not? If I do not, Deck and Cover does 50 and then 10 from Poison. Sableye is able to live it, you know, having 60 damage, and, you know, maybe I can make stuff happen. So early on, this is the plan I decide to go for. You know, Excelgar, you know, he's actually got to get a lot of stuff out to be able to chain Deck and Covers, especially without Empoleon's diving draw. You know, you got to have another Shelmet down, you got to get draw back into Excelgar, draw back into DCE. You know, it's not easy. So I kind of get a little chain going of my own, which is switch to get out of the paralysis, and then, you know, I got 60 damage on me. Well, that's the perfect amount to max potion. So, you know, I actually do that, and then, you know, attach another energy, Junk Hunt for switch and max potion. And this goes on for at least like 3 or 4 rounds, and we're thinking, you know, this is just a complete stalemate. Neither of us is going to be able to take a prize. Of course, however, because I have to max potion and discard the energy, you know, I'm actually losing an energy card every turn. This is, I believe, where energy retrieval does come in handy. That's able to kind of get me this little max potion switch shenanigan. It's able to prolong that a little bit more. But this kind of keeps up, and at some point, you know, I gotta decide, do I want to try to maybe, you know, just keep the stall act going on? You know, maybe eventually he'll whiff a Deck and Cover. And maybe let's just let it go to time, and then I can take a quick prize off a laser bank a Combi. Of course, Combi only has 30 HP, so any laser bank poison damage is going to immediately knock it out. So I'm thinking on that. But the situation is I've got a Sableye up with 40 damage on it after he deck and covered it for 30 and then 10 from poison because of Eviolite. And that's going to be at 50 after I end my turn, then 60 coming back into my turn. If he cannot hit me for just 10 damage, I'll be able to live. I've got a Skyla in my hand. I could Skyla for a switch and prevent that prize taken almost for sure. Get rid of the poison. But outside that Skyla, my hand is dead. So I decided to play long term, and I Skyla for an N instead. And just kind of let that Sableye be stuck up there, paralyzed and poisoned. And actually, the attack that gets him his first prize is Sting Missile. Does the requisite 10 damage that he needs. And now he's got a prize, so now I've got to take prizes. And the only way I'm going to get prizes is to escalate things and throw down Verbank. Now, this is very bad defensively, of course, because he's got poison going on as well, and now deck and cover is going to do, 80, which is enough to knock out Sableye before I get my turn. So, things are now escalated. Stuff is going to start getting knocked out now, especially Sableye's. Every deck and cover is going to be a knockout, of course. I think I did mention that he's got Garbodor as well. Since he had Garbodor, I think he actually got one out. I didn't bother putting any of mine down. But definitely the play of the game. This was huge. I decided, all right. I don't know if I had anything to junk up for or not. I shoot him with a laser on an Excelgar. I got a Dark Claw, Confuse Ray for 30. This puts him at 60 damage going into his turn. And I flip heads on Confusion, which is crucial. I gotta think, he doesn't have a DCE in play, just the Excelgar. I think he's actually got a second one on the bench. Hope he doesn't draw a DCE, and he draws a DCE. However, he attaches it to the benched Excelgar, which is fine. But then I guess he neglects that A, you can retreat while you're confused. And B, Excelgar has a free retreat cost. So he actually just passes and gives me the prize on Excelgar. I just sit there poker face like, I know what you can do, but I'm going to have to hope that you don't know what you can do. And sure enough, he misplays it. And I'm able to get that free prize. I don't tell him about it until after the game, of course, because if I had mentioned it during or immediately, I probably would have been a wuss and let him take it back or something. But anyway. So from there, I got my first prize. I believe he's able to take a couple more prizes as well, but as far as prize racing goes, he's also got some Combis down, so I'm able to take some prizes on those. At one point, I think I was actually about to run out of Sableyes, and I did actually have to throw down a Trubbish, and it was a good thing I did because my Sableye did get knocked out, and so if I hadn't thrown down that Trubbish, I would have lost the game on bench. But anyway, eventually time gets called, and he's got, I forget what Shelmet he has, but he's got Shelmet, which is a I'm really not sure which of these. I thought there were 3 Shelmet. Oh well, maybe that's I thought that was a Plasma Storm Shelmet. Oh well, maybe. No, maybe I think that's next set. Next set has a Shelmet. Okay. Anyway. He's got one of these Shelmets out. They both have 60 HP. But the big thing is he has a giant cape on it. And that bumps it from 60 up to 80. So time has been called. We're tied on prizes. And I believe I think this is on my turn 3, something like that maybe. I junk hunt. No, maybe this is my turn 1. I'm not sure. I junk hunt for a laser and a dowsing machine. Now my plan is to get back Dark Claw, but I get back Dowsing Machine so I can kind of disguise what I'm gonna get. That's one of the benefits of junk hunting for Dowsing Machine. I don't think he had an end or anything to disrupt me, but nor I don't think did he have a way to get a 3 retreat cost Shelmet out of the active spot. But anyway, I just have to hope for either A, no evolution to remove the poison, you know, because he's got 60 damage on him right now, or else just no DC to attack. And you know, I just kind of have to hope at that point if he's able to get a DCE and get a deck and cover off, then I lose. But he does not. He just has to pass it. He just has to passes. He has to pass, and Shelmet dies to poison. At this point, I think it's like turn 4 or so. But since we're tied on prizes, next prize wins, and I get the last prize off the Shelmet. So that was extremely intense, very, very fun, very interesting game between two off-the-wall decks, I guess. You know, I guess we kind of both said that we had bad matchups against each other, since I think it was probably more of a bad matchup for me, since, you know, especially if he had actually went ahead and played Verbank, then yeah, definitely. But he didn't seem to play Verbank, so that was interesting. But anyway, moving on to round 6, where we got a way more conventional deck, maybe slightly outdated, but Darkrai and Hydreigon. Now this is a deck that revolves around abilities. You know, Dark Trance, Dark Cloak, so of course Garbodor is going to be paramount in this one. So we start up, and he flips over Sigilyph, and of course Sigilyph is going to be complete waste of time in this matchup, since I don't have a single Pokemon EX in this deck, not even Darkrai. And when I flip over Sableye, he thinks it's going to be Mirror, and I'm just like, nope, not in any way, shape, or form. Of course, at this point we're at the 1 and 3, so you know we're a little bit looser with deck information and stuff. And so I think fairly soon I get out Garbodor. You know, that's going to be priority 1. I want to be able to strand stuff active without Dark Cloak. I think he does get down Hydreigon. I don't know if he ever actually gets to use Dark Trance a single time or not. But I think he may knock out a Garbodor at some point and gets to use it. But he said he didn't play any Tool Scrapper, but he did have one switch. So at some point after I get Garbodor out, I catch up a Mewtwo. You know, it's Darkrai Hydreigon, so very unlikely does it play double colorless. You know, typically if you play any special energies, you're playing blends typically, so you can Dragon Blast. But anyway, at some point he is able to get a Night Spear off, and one of the big things about this game was that I had 2 Sableyes prized. So I kept having to use Super Rods, Rescue Scarves, things to get them back in the deck, back in my hand. Hammer Flips go alright. And I think this one goes to time as well. So I'm able to get decent enough laser damage. Of course, he's playing EXs, unlike the last 2 rounds. So you know, my lasers are taking 2 prizes each time. You know, with just the one switch that he already burned. Oh, big thing though, I almost forgot. He said he had no Sableyes in his deck. Now, Sableye is actually Sableye's worst nightmare, because you know, these kind of Sableye decks like I have, they thrive on just depriving resources. And the reason that's so is because with Sableye you can restore your own resources that deprive your opponent's resources. So when they have Sableye as well, they can get back their resources, and then they have those resources to reuse. And I just said resources about 5 times in the last 2 sentences. Anyway, so he had no Sableyes. Whew, huge relief for me. This means he's not going to be able to junk hunt for Dark Patch, so he is not going to have infinite energy attachments. You know, so I just got to run him out of energy, run him out of Dark Patch. And eventually I do. Once again, we're tied on prizes at turn 3 of time. I almost deck out, but I think, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we've got we've got Super Rod. We can do the whole retreat shenanigan if we need to. I don't think I ever actually need to. I probably have like 7 energy cards, or almost all of my energy. No, I'm at 7, but you know, of my 8 card deck, probably over half of it is energy at some point. And eventually I'm just able to get his Mewtwo dead to take take 2 of my last 3 prizes and win that way. And I think of my last 3 prizes, 2 of them were still Sableyes. So there was that. And then final round. At this point I'm back to 3 and 3. This is a 2-3 matchup. So I'm now back to 3 and 3. So I'm back to even. You know, so whether I go +1 or -1, I'm back to where I usually end up. And this is a big basics, but this one's got Terrakion EX for some energy acceleration, so it's a little bit of a twist on there. So I believe that's actually what he leads with. And I kind of have the right game plan for this, I think. You know, Terrakion EX has a bigger retreat cost, can't attack for 1 energy card. So, you know, my plan is just kind of catch or harass it. You know, eventually he's going to run out of switches. I think at some point I think he actually has to scramble switch into a Landorus to hit me. I do get an Eviolite down, and, you know, I think I'm going alright with, you know, hammering, catching up Terrakion. I think long term that Terrakion being on the bench, unless he had a super scoop up, probably would have won me the game. But unfortunately, I think as I mentioned earlier, this deck has very poor in the way of Pokemon search, and I'm only able to get out 1 Sableye, and that 1 Sableye is unable to go the distance for me. He eventually goes down about like turn 4 or 5, and don't get out anything else. So that ends the day, and that ends the States run with Sableye Garbodor. Overall, you know, I unfortunately did not run into any Blastoise or any Klinklang, which are, you know, matchups I really wanted to play against because I felt like they were going to be pretty solid. But unfortunately, I played against neither one. It was mostly just big, kind of after I kind of lost to that Ray Eels on time, and then you know, got almost dunked by Big Basics. It was kind of a tailspin of now I'm not really playing versus metagame decks, and this deck is kind of anti-meta. So whenever that happened, it's not really good against, you know, or as good against some other stuff, I guess. Definitely not the deck I played round 5, but although I was able to win that one. So, you know, kind of got spiraled down there, and I guess didn't get to play against the high tier decks I was hoping to play against. But anyway, overall, I'm pretty satisfied with how the deck did, I guess. You know, my typical performance is always even, so I was able to get that, and I probably would have preferred going 3 and 4 with this deck, as opposed to going 4 and 3 with Blastoise, which was about the only other thing I was considering. At the time, I was so apprehensive about Blastoise's chances against Plasmaclang and stuff like that I just decided to go with Party Time, and had a pretty good time with it. So you know, I decided, you know what, I'm just kind of gonna be here to troll today, I guess. And but you know, I had a lot of fun with this deck. So we're actually either gonna split this or combine it into one video with regionals. So let's go into that.